Hey, yo. What's up, Internet? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. We're going to talk about Supergirl today. As with most of my reviews, I will keep it spoiler-free for a bit. First couple minutes here will be spoiler-free if you haven't had an opportunity to see the movie yet. And then that will change, and we'll talk about the actual content in the movie, full of spoilers. But yeah, let's talk about sort of where the movie landed. We're in a little bit of a DC rebrand under sort of the banner of "In James Gunn We Trust." I think that is over. I think Peacemaker season 2 and this movie, unfortunately, make me not as excited to have James Gunn at the helm. And Supergirl was fine. It wasn't bad. The issue, I think, with Supergirl is, for me, for sure, was always going to be I was going to judge it compared to Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, the graphic novel from Tom King and Bilquis Evely. I don't know if I'm saying that the illustrator's name correctly, but like that, the basis for this movie is phenomenal. And for some reason, the director went out of his way to not read the source material, and it really made the movie a lot worse. Supergirl is fine for like an action film, and it's a really big bummer for what it could have been had it stuck to its source material. And honestly, I think it's a miss just in sort of the world that we were establishing with James Gunn's take on Superman. We had in Superman bright colors, a big color palette, a pretty deep cut on some things. We got Hawkgirl. We got a Green Lantern that isn't Hal Jordan. We got space monsters. We got Superman saving squirrels. We were introduced to Krypto and Supergirl at the end of that film. So it was an origin story, but also a movie that was fully formed, like the universe existed. And there were glimmers of that in Supergirl, where we're introduced to some of these planets that exist and some of the different things. An expansion, I think, on the origin story that was introduced at Superman of how Krypton came to no longer exist, which again, I think was really good. But Supergirl was short. It was 1 hour and 48 minutes. And it felt like an action movie that you could have really slotted any superhero into. And that's where I think it suffers. Is it a fine action film? Yeah. Even for like James Gunn affiliated movies, he wasn't the director here. But for James Gunn affiliated movies, it probably has the weakest soundtrack. And that's one of the things that I really liked about James Gunn stuff is these different franchises he had a hand in had a different feel. Creature Commandos is an okay show that I think was really elevated by having really good music, and not just like, oh, I like Corporate Clowny, so it's really cool to hear them in, Gogol Bordello's great, so really cool to hear him in the soundtrack. But like, it made sense that these characters then had theme music. Superman has theme music. Star Wars characters have theme music. The Force has a theme. Luke Skywalker has a theme. Yoda has a theme. All these different characters. Anakin / Darth Vader, obviously, the Imperial March. So like, to do sort of classic cinema with a franchise like this, like the DC world, and not go super heavy-handed and not go dark and brooding like Zack Snyder. And I'm somebody who's like I don't hate on the Zack Snyder universe. I think Man of Steel was pretty good, actually. I think it got worse after that. But like, I don't think it was like awful and deserves all the vitriol that it got. It was at the end of doom and gloom superhero stuff. But anybody who's going to say that can't work and like Guardians of the Galaxy is the way to go, it's like, well, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 worked well, Guardians 2 less so. I don't even think I saw Guardians 3 because at that point I had such bad MCU burnout. So this movie went dark, and not in content. It lightened up a lot of the heavy content that the source material has, but the color palette is really dark. It's just like a really sort of gloomy shot on green screen sort of thing. And one of the things about the comic that it's based on is the color palette is really interesting and sort of unique, but there's a softness to it, and there's so much emotional depth in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is the original title of this movie. They cut it because they cut so much of the source material out. And again, it's just such a bummer. They made Krem of the Yellow Hills a just regular bad guy. They made him like super strong so he could fight Supergirl, but like he's not. He's just kind of a bastard. He's supposed to be in the source material. He's an outlaw. He's not a super villain. He's just a bad person. And that makes the story far more compelling instead of, again, falling for the trap of like bigger stakes, world ending crises makes a better bad guy. Now, I think the movie attempted to say, hey, people who sell women into sex slavery are bad and should die. And I would love for that to be like super heavy handed, but current president. So I get where that messaging comes from, and I don't really have an issue shifting that part of the source material to say we're going to tell this story instead. But again, there was no emotional gravity to it. It was just sort of like, oh, they're bad people because they're taking child brides, and also Supergirl's a woman, so like motherhood, am I right? Like it didn't land if, and I'm being generous by saying that's the story they decided to tell instead. It just seems like they cut back on what was a really good, deep story that they had room to do. Again, you could have added 20 minutes to this film and it would have done a lot, I think. It would have, again, not with just like another green screen, vapid sort of action sequence, but where the movie was best and where the comic was best was sort of the mundane nature of moving through space. Tom King's original pitch before he wrote the comic series was Supergirl and Lobo in a true grit type story. And so, yeah, it was fine. And it really, I think I personally am saying it's worse by just being fine because it came from great source material. Now, we have to put all this in context to say a bunch of fans, quote unquote, of comic books don't like movies that have a woman lead and are always going to be hypercritical of a female lead character in a movie like this. And that's shitty and sucks. And I go to my local comic shop and some of the old heads who are in there say like pretty horrible stuff. And it's like really disappointing because the comics I read and the comic creators I follow are all really progressive. And I think comics always have, well, I don't want to say all comics. I think there's an avenue of comics that always have been progressive, and we've seen that, and that is the things that are pretty long lasting. But again, what at the source material made it great all pretty much gets cut. It's again a bad retelling of a really great story in the source material. But the acting is good. Millie Alcock is great. My wife, who's not a comic book person, hasn't read the source material and went along with me. She's a good sport. Said it was fine as an action film. She didn't love all of the crypto CGI and thought in some places it was really good and in some places really bad, which I would agree with. I also, have to acknowledge they can't get a real dog to do the things Crypto does. And also in this movie, Crypto gets shot with an arrow. So like you can't have a real dog. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when you look at something like Lord of the Rings, I'm biased, right? I have my movie theater size poster behind me here. It holds up because they did minimal CGI, and people can say Gollum doesn't look that great anymore or whatever, but like it holds up really well because there's so much practical effects, and where they use CGI was really to expand things. I think really the only thing in Lord of the Rings 25 years later that looks bad is like Legolas sliding down the stairs, shooting arrows at Helm's Deep. Looks like it aged poorly. But these movies, these superhero films, I think are going to keep aging more poorly. I think some of the older superhero movies already look bad in 4K. So like, just this I've talked about this before. Is my big criticism of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was like Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was great because it wasn't galactic level threat. It was a local story. And Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is a local story. It's not Supergirl saves the day. It's Supergirl helps someone through patience and restraint. It's like a big theme in one of the chapters is Supergirl doesn't help people by being super. It's not because she can shoot lasers from her eyes. It's because she doesn't shoot lasers from her eyes. She holds back her power in order to make eye contact with you. It's not that she has frost breath that makes her super. It's that she warms her breath before speaking to you so she doesn't harm you. It's that she has all this great power and she's not using it for harm. She's using it for good. And that patience, that restraint is one of the themes in this. Supergirl isn't trying to help Ruthie get revenge in the source material. She's trying to show her that revenge won't make her feel better. And instead of just telling her that over and over again, she shows her. And it's one of the things that I think is the big miss of this movie is it could have been show, don't tell. That is what good art does. It shows us something about ourselves, ideally, or about civilization or society. And this movie was all tell. It felt like a Netflix movie. And that's not good. I saw the early reviews were bad and was like, misogynistic dudes hating on a female-led movie. I'm still stoked because this story rocks. And I was bummed to go to this theater and find that they told a different story. That was fine. It was well acted. It looks good. It's fun. But is not as good as Superman, is not as good as a bunch of the other James Gunn films. And that's a bummer because, again, I think the source material is really elevated and it could have been really great. Spoiler-free review, wrapping up here. Hey, hi, we're going to do spoilers from here on out. I don't understand what the point of this film was if we weren't going to take the source material. And again, the director got a bunch of flack for like sort of laughing in an interview and almost boasting that he hadn't read the source material. Like, bro, don't direct this movie then, because there are people who loved the source material. It got a bunch of awards and was like a really good story that had an interesting art direction. Right? If I'm not like the biggest comic book nerd, and my comic book reviews tend not to get a lot of reviews because I'm not a comic book channel. I'm a mental health channel. We'll get into the mental health of this film. Watchmen historically has a very unique color palette. It's something that made it stand out at the time. And it's something that I think helped it stand the test of time. Zack Snyder didn't honor that entirely, but there were nods to it. It was an homage in the movie Watchmen. One of the big gripes of the movie Watchmen is shifting away from the source material's ending that made it not great. And even I think critical of like the HBO series, which in a vacuum was pretty good, but like in the world that Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons made doesn't hold up. But like, again, I know it's hard to compare. It's hard to not compare the movie to the source material when it was in clear nod. And it nowhere does it say Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow in the film. There is in the credits a thing that says huge appreciation to Tom King and Bilquis Evely. But like I just happen to sit through the credits for every movie I go to because I like to see the theater. It's a thing I've always done because seeing movies when I was a kid, we were very poor growing up. I didn't get to see a lot of movies in the theater. And so I always stayed to maximize the thing. That is not like a post-credits thing. I usually check and see if there's a post-credit scene. So we knew there wasn't one, but we stayed anyway. And right at the end of the credits, there's like with great appreciation or something like that. But like the movie was originally announced to Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Cram of the Yellow Hills is the villain. Like that's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. That's the story they're going to tell. And if you know the deep cuts, if you know the Tom King pitch, which I mentioned earlier, included Lobo, then you're not even mad that Lobo exists. I am mad the way they put Lobo in this movie because he doesn't need to exist in this movie. Again, like it's a marketing ploy more than anything. Jason Momoa looks like he's having a lot of fun. Supergirl establishes Lobo as a big deal. She doesn't want to deal with him. She doesn't want to mess with him, which is like a really nice sort of power scaling moment that I think like works really well other than like me being mad that like Krem of the Yellow Hills, who is not a super villain, he's just a regular dude who's a bastard, can apparently go toe to toe with this immortal being. Again, like just you missed it. If you had read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow and made this movie, I would have said, gosh, you didn't understand the source material. Since Craig, is it Craig? What a Craig. It might not be Craig Gillespie or whatever. I didn't recognize the director. He's not somebody who's like, oh, I know this guy from all these other movies. That feels mean to say that, but I'm just being honest. The Lobo edition from my viewing of the movie was so he could kill Krem, right? Because spoilers here, obviously, again, letting everyone know, spoilers, in the comic book, Ruthie and Supergirl don't kill Krem. He goes to the Phantom Zone. I was going to say the Twilight Zone, and I was like, that is not correct. Krem gets sent to the Phantom Zone for 1,000 years or whatever, and the warden eventually lets Supergirl know he's repented, he's sorry, he comes out, he's an old withered man, he apologizes. Ruthie hits him with a stick. We all go home happy. Because Ruthie learns that vengeance isn't what is going to make her happy. Supergirl doesn't kill, which seems like an important thing. And for me, like, why is that an important thing? Jeremy, you said Man of Steel was good and Superman kills in that one. Again, like if you can place that into comic book lore, it makes sense. Is it the best story to tell in an origin movie? No. Are we differentiating Kara from Kal? Yes. Or from Clark, right? Are we learning is more than just like she's an angsty teenager, even though she's older than him? Space travel does some weird things to aging. Sure, I think the movie infuriatingly draws some beats from the original story. The planet that has a green sun, the green sun that was in the comics artificially put there as a prison planet for Superman. Somebody made a planet to trap Superman, and there's an oasis, and to go down to the water draws a T-Rex and all the other monsters that are put on the planet while being under a green sun. And it's a very funny moment in the comic where Supergirl says, gosh, everybody hates Kal. Because Superman got rescued from that planet in 45 minutes by the Justice League, and Kara and Ruthie have to stay on that planet for about 10 hours. And again, a nice nod to like, look at how big of a deal she is, without saying, hey, Supergirl's just as important as Superman. Don't be a bigot, right? And like, I agree with that sentiment, but also show, don't tell carries a lot of weight there. So that nice nod in the movie is the same thing. Show, don't tell. Kara not wanting to take on Lobo puts Lobo into a certain power bracket, which is, again, I think is a nice nod. Jason Momoa looks like he's having blast. The character design, the bike, all that stuff looked pretty good, I thought. Again, but because Lobo didn't matter at the end of the movie, why was he in it other than to get people who would be like, ugh, a Supergirl movie, I don't like women in my movies, to get those people to come out? Yeah, put Lobo in it. And like, if I'm a Hollywood executive, I can certainly wrap my head around that. I sure wish we didn't have to pander to the worst people in our society. But if your target audience also has a bunch of misogynistic men in it, I guess you have to pander to them. But that's not great. I wish we didn't have to do that. Right? But again, as a viewer of the movie, I'm sitting there being like, oh, well, Lobo's the out, right? Lobo's the way that this makes sense, where he can kill Krem because he is not a good guy. Ruthie learns her lessons. Supergirl doesn't kill because that is an important rule for super people. Nope. That's not what we do. That's not what we do. And again, like, it's just a bizarre choice then to include him, have that out available and not take it. So now one movie into having this new Supergirl in this new James Gunn run DC universe, Supergirl kills people because she's got more trauma than Superman. It's just like, we have people who can kill people. Peacemaker is a pretty big corner of this little world already, right? We have Vigilante with Peacemaker, even more unhinged and happy to kill than Peacemaker. We have Amanda Waller. Like, the figures we have in this DC iteration all worked to kill someone because they're not good characters. It's what sets Batman and Flash and Supergirl and Hawkgirl and whatever iterations of the Green Lantern we're all about to get in a month or so here from the new Lanterns show. In Creature Commandos, right? Like, what separates some of the good characters and our Harley Quinn, former villain turned anti-hero, can kill people. We didn't need Supergirl to be in that bracket. And again, it just takes a lot of the heart from what the original story was trying to tell. The other big issue I had was, like, Krem of the Yellow Hills in the comic is a king's agent. He works for the king on the planet that Ruthie's from, going around trying to find traitors, ostensibly. We learn that Krem's a bit of a bastard from the get-go, and he would often make an off-color joke about the king, and when people laughed, he would say, "I get to execute you." So he's always been a bastard. He's not a supervillain. He doesn't have powers. He's just a bastard. He's a tiny tyrant. He's your local police officer. He is every single ICE agent. He is a tiny tyrant. He's a bastard. He says his off-color joke to Ruthie's dad. Ruthie's family are like rock farmers. Simple people. They let Krem stay with them. After opening their home to him, Krem makes this off-color joke, and Ruthie's father starts berating him, telling him to leave, gets offended, defends the king's honor, tells Krem to leave, and Krem kills him. Krem kills him, it's later revealed, as he's trying to goad Ruthie into killing him, and sort of the climax of the series. Krem is trying to goad Ruthie in and says basically, like, he couldn't tolerate a world in which Ruthie's father, who was this nothing rock farmer, thought he was better than Krem. And Krem, even though he had not made it clear he was a king's agent, was a king's agent. And so in his mind, he was a big deal. And the idea that somebody wouldn't respect him made him so mad that he would murder them. And again, that's abuse of power. That's tiny tyrants everywhere. That's, again, every single ICE agent. That's the person who runs the HOA that nobody likes. Like, tiny tyrants exist everywhere. And again, the ones that we give guns to, the ones that we put swords in their hands, are a problem. That's the story that is told. And so again, is it a bigger story that is perhaps more relevant in our modern times to say, hey, people who are involved in sex trafficking of minors are bad? Yeah, because again, the president is a pedophile. So I get that elevates Krem to like next level villain. But then just tell that story. Don't give him superpowers then. Make him be sniveling and sneaky and still a bastard, and he's, the little finger from Game of Thrones of the DC world, right? Could have done that, didn't do that. So it just like got in its own way continually. And in this version, Krem is already like a brigand when the movie starts, and he just comes in and kills Ruthie's whole family. Because Ruthie's dad is a famous sword maker. Again, like, there were glimmers of like, oh, Ruthie's brother jumps out to scare Ruthie, not realizing they're being robbed. And Krem turns and throws his axe as instinct, killing Ruthie's brother. Like, even that was like, okay. But again, part of what works in Supergirl, the comic, was Ruthie has a family to go home to. She has her brothers still. She has her mother still. Like, she's in it for the honor because her father was an honorable man, and the way that Krem killed him was dishonorable. And so she has this idea of justice in her revenge quest that Supergirl has to say, truth, justice, the American way. Nah, that's not justice. Revenge doesn't bring your dad back, and so it's not just. And like, again, I think that's a good story to tell, and I think audiences can handle it. We've seen tiny tyrants kill people in broad daylight for years now, since we've had cell phones available to see police brutality. I think we're ready for a nuanced story. I don't think we need to dumb down the story so much. And maybe we do, right? Maybe that's me reading comics and knowing that like Nazis are bad when there are people out there who are like watching The Boys and think that Homelander is cool. Like I get a loud but small fraction of the audience are idiots who spend all their time online and hate women, and like, yes, we are trying to teach them something, I guess, but like you can't max out all the tropes that are boring and tired and expect the audience to go home with some sort of message. And so in the movie, Supergirl just kills Krem, and then she and Ruthie go like finish celebrating her birthday, and then Supergirl goes, and like Clark is happy to see that she's choosing Earth after all. But like that isn't even the story they told, that she was thinking of not. It was just she's out on a bender on a red planet, a planet with a red sun, because of that. Also, like instead of fighting like tech transport pirates, Supergirl in the comic fights like a space dragon. It's way cooler. The Mordru ball, the globe in the comics works way better than anything that Krem does in the movie, which is basically a little tiny magic globe that transports somebody across the universe. They're very hard to get. They're very sparse, but apparently like everybody's got kryptonite because Krem's got all these kryptonite arrows and stuff. But again, I think it would have been really good as a comic, as a nerd, but not next level nerd. There are a lot of people who know more about this stuff than I do. To have it introduced that Superman and Supergirl are vulnerable to magic works really well, because we're just like real big on, we've already had Superman has a clone that he has to fight, and we have kryptonite, and you know, brain dead monkeys on Twitter also. But some of, you know, there's such a level of abstraction to the comics that are selling really good right now. Like the Absolute series is a riff, I would say, partially. The Absolute series is perhaps one of one. It's just really hard to compare, probably. The Absolute series includes Superman's version of it is fighting Ra's al Ghul, who's running sort of this like centuries old evil corporation. And if you're familiar at all with Jason Aaron's work, I've interviewed him. Check out the episode where we talk about religious trauma and superheroes on my podcast, Your Therapist Needs Therapy. Plug for that. I'm a big fan of Jason Aaron. But his run on Thor includes like Thor, God of Thunder, needing to fight an evil corporation. And that's not just a villain you can punch in the face. And so there's nuance there, and I think that works really well. It seems to be what we'll also get some version of an Absolute story. The Absolute story is also just very cool, of having like a gigantic Batman fighting a gigantic Bane, and all of Batman's friends being bad guys. I will say the Absolute series I'm enjoying the most is Martian Manhunter. I've talked about the Absolute series on my YouTube channel elsewhere. We might have to update it because it's still just really good, which isn't the way that comics always work. Sometimes they start out hot and they don't really go anywhere. But that level of nuance is in comics all the time, and I think we can handle it. And like, speaking of Jason Aaron and Thor, like Love and Thunder was such a bomb because you introduced this very cool, nuanced character, and you got Christian Bale to play him, Gore, the God Butcher. And then you like made it a silly, haha, funny movie because you're chasing that like Guardians of the Galaxy vibe at the time. And again, like, we can have different movies that tell us different things. Give us a Western set in space. Give us True Grit with Lobo and Supergirl. Give us Cowboy Bebop. Give us a straight action series. Give us over-the-top anime superpowers, like in any number of animes, but also like the power scaling in the Absolute series. I'm so excited for DC's animated lineup that like their movies not being great is a bummer, because again, I think there are people who really love the stories told in the comics and are doing cool stuff with it. DC just announced they're going to do Absolute Batman as an animated series, which is going to be awesome. I'm so excited for that. Tom King has been promoting the shit out of the animated version of Mr. Miracle because they're sticking true to the source material. So Tom King gets to be involved. So we get to keep the really good story. You already have a good story. Just tell it. It won a bunch of awards. Just tell that story. It's tough. It's tough being a fan of things. It's tough being somebody who wants nuance and then gets slop instead. And again, I think it's not a bad film. It's just a miss. I have no interest in watching it again. Or even just talking about like Superman again is like, oh, I would watch that movie again. Like I've got young boys. When they get a little older, I'll be excited to show them that. It will make sense to start with the James Gunn Superman rather than Man of Steel, because my boys have seen Superman adventures that I grew up with because I have it on Blu-ray. Shout out to owning things and having physical media. Batman animated series on DVD. Like they see that stuff because partially it's important to me, but also as a parent, I'm happy to watch things that they watch. We watched DC's Bat Fam was pretty funny and interesting. So again, like DC has this huge catalog of characters that are not just Batman and also not just Batman and Superman that can do well. Look at Peacemaker. And the side quest characters in Suicide Squad. The idea that a show like Creature Commandos can exist and not just exist, but get a second season is like, yes, we are interested in that. My criticism of Creature Commandos is just trauma porn at some point. It's just 8 different origin stories with how traumatic can we make them all, and a baller soundtrack. And it worked well enough to get a second season. Swamp Thing could exist. We had what, 4 seasons of Doom Patrol? So again, like the audience is ready for it. We don't need to be babied like this. We don't want to go to the big screen and just turn our brains off. It's my big criticism of Mandalorian and Grogu is like it just didn't tell a story. So give us movies with nuance. Backrooms did really well. Obsession did really well. The horror films that are doing well are not cookie cutter easy films. They're artistic and somewhat, I didn't see Obsession, but like open-ended in a way that are different. James Tynion is doing a ton of cool stuff with his comics that are based in horror and they're sort of open-ended, and he has a lot of projects right now that aren't finished, so we'll see how they all land. But like again, horror is doing well because we're interested in the nuance. We want the escapism of superpowers, and we want the story conclusion of the good guys win because we keep not seeing that in the real world. But like, we don't need it to just be vapid. We don't need it to be meaningless escapism. Give us something to escape to, a more just, a more meaningful, a more colorful, a more fun, a more over the top, whatever. Give us something to escape to, not just empty escapism. Please, pretty please. I have so many comic books because the stories they tell are really good. It's the escapism, but there's also nuance, you know? Stop adapting comic book series that tell really good stories and then not tell that story. Don't do a TV show based on a comic book if you're gonna do a different story. Just tell the story. People who have liked the comic book and tune in will be happy to see that, and people who are unfamiliar with the source material will then go read it. Like, I'm telling everybody about Supergirl to like go read the comic because it's actually really good. And I don't know that the movie is going to drive people to it. Hey, there's a much better story to tell here. Go read that. Isn't really here in the movie. Whereas like, yeah, Superman was good enough to be like a bump in comic book sales. Like, which stories did we draw from? Draw from 4 or 5 different versions. Draw from 4 or 5 different stories. Again, this was a standalone story that could be told that way. The Wanda Vision series was like a rough take on, again, a Tom King series for Vision, but like a singular story that worked well that I didn't stick with because I stopped paying for Disney. But like, so I didn't watch Agatha all along. Is that where we followed up? And then I'm like, I don't know, 17 movies behind in the MCU. So I haven't seen any of the Doctor Strange. I don't know what happens with Wanda. But like, again, we have these sort of one shots. We have things like different imprints of stories. We have DC Black. We have all these other things. Give us a dark, gritty Batman. Because again, if somebody wants to talk about superhero movies and they put The Dark Knight as the best one, I think they're wrong. And I can criticize the ending of The Dark Knight, but like, yeah, the dark, gritty realism works some of the time. And the really colorful stuff of like Superman works. The dance off as the humorous punchline to Guardians of the Galaxy 1 works well. Give us a bunch of different stuff. And I keep saying I won't talk about wrestling in every video and I should just start a wrestling YouTube channel, but that seems like a lot of extra work too. But this is like pro wrestling right now too. A ton of in WWE, which I don't watch regularly anymore because it's gotten so bad since the 2010s, honestly. It's never gotten better, but it's a lot of tell don't show, which is like every Netflix show right now too, right? Like Netflix executives are saying, have the characters say out loud what they're doing because people are on their phones. How about you make a show that's good enough that people aren't on their phones when they're watching, right? But also the difference between something like New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW, Lucha Underground back when it was on, and WWE was like, hey, there's all these different forms of wrestling. Wrestling can be funny and silly. A guy like Orange Cassidy puts his hands in his pockets. It's a very bad fighting style. And it makes sense in the universe they've created. And it makes sense as a storytelling beat to have that character. To have a mask versus mask match between two luchadors, neither of whom are actual luchadors. One is hates luchadors and one is from Germany, and we're having a mask versus mask match in Arena, Mexico, and it's awesome, is like a preposterous thing that only sort of works when you let the audience like what they like. Sometimes wrestling should be hardcore matches where people are bleeding a lot and putting forks into their heads, and sometimes it should be funny, and sometimes it should be hour-long matches that are technical masterpieces. And sometimes it should just be like a brawl and we're throwing hands. And the companies that do that well, I think, draw more people in. The comic book series that include humor and gravitas and exciting action and deep literary references and cuts. It's what, like, I'm a sucker for the literature reference. So like, that's part of the reason I like Tom King so much. And I also like the escapism over the top action. So I'll read the Absolute series. I love something like Southern Bastards, East of West, all this stuff that's out there. Again, a lot of James Tynion. Shout out to growing up 10 minutes away from me. Wisconsin native, James Tynion, and all his horror stuff. We want different things. We don't need it to just be copy and paste action movie. Give us a smorgasbord of things, and you have this great colorful cast of characters in the superhuman universe of DC Comics to draw from. Let that be a thing. Look at how well Harley and Poison Ivy is doing. Again, DC animation, but we have like King Shark and a talking plant are like your other main characters. Clayface, who's a failed actor, and like, I'm excited with the limitations. I'm somewhat excited. I'm cautiously optimistic that a horror film of Clayface might work. It's on my list. I haven't gotten to it yet, to watch the Spider Noir series. Like, sure, give us nonsense 1930s Spider-Man. Absolutely. Sign me up. We want the variety. We don't want 34 superhero movies that are exactly the same. And so ultimately where I land, I'm like, this film was fine, but not good. Certainly isn't bad. It's a huge missed opportunity, and is really disappointing as somebody who really liked the source material. And it just didn't move me, and it's certainly not moving the audience in any significant way. And if all it was a vehicle to get Lobo on screen to then make a Lobo movie, like I really, really, really don't like that. Although I would go see a Lobo movie. But yeah, like then it's just, then you're part of the problem. You can't say, oh, misogynistic fans are bad if you're going to be misogynistic. We made a woman movie so that we could launch Lobo is like a bad outcome. Anyways, it was fine. I maintained high expectations after the initial bad reviews, went and saw it opening weekend, and honestly was pretty bummed about how it turned out. It just was fine. And I think for the amount of money that is spent, the amount of talent you had to make this movie, and the really great source material, that is a big miss. So, James Gunn, huge fan of comics, lover of comics, telling good comic book stories. I'm a fan of James Gunn at the head of a corporation that is interested in making money off of comics. Nah, not it. So hopefully we get more of the former and less of the latter with DC moving forward. I also know Comet being the super horse. Also a pretty pivotal part of Woman of Tomorrow that we didn't get. So I really thought with Crypto being introduced at the end of Superman, we'd be open to that. Again, I just think Superman was such a rich version of the Superman comic mythos that everything that existed in Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow would have fit and like really felt right at home. And so to get what could have been, you know, Iron Man 3, whatever Marvel movie that nobody saw, was the guy with the magic rings. I didn't see the Doctor Strange movie, so I'm not the typical sample, but was the one with like Kit Harington and the Eternals. People didn't go see that. So yeah, the fact that you introduced Supergirl and it is an Eternals level movie is a huge bummer. Could have done a lot better than that. Even with what they gave us, we could have had Lobo do the killing, and that still would have made the movie a lot better. So I will continue to watch what they put out, and also I'm not somebody who's going to be necessarily going to see it opening weekend like I have been. So not like they've lost a fan. I'm not boycotting, but I'm a lot more lukewarm than I was, and more likely to wait for things to come out on HBO Max than I am to go spend money on it in theater. So, which again feels like a missed opportunity as the target audience. So yeah, that's my review of Supergirl. Fuck off all the trad wife, tech bro, fascist loving, boot licking idiots who don't want a Supergirl movie, don't want a woman leading a film. Millie Alcock was a lot better than Gal Gadot in Wonder Woman. Again, the talent was all there. The issue with this movie was not the people in it. They were all great. Even, I forget who played Krem, was like acting the hell out of it for a role that, again, did not need to exist. And I think honestly could have been a lot more nuanced if it hadn't just been a supervillain. Anyway, go read Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Go buy it from your local comic book shop or your local independent bookstore, please. It's great. And maybe, you know, they'll just do a DC animated version that's a shot-for-shot remake of that, and they'll be a lot better. Come back for me being super excited when Mr. Miracle comes out. They better stick the landing on that. Also, let's see, where are we at? Next week, I'm in the middle of a series. I'll plug my own work here. Thanks for sticking around, 1:45. I'll plug my own series here. I'm doing a series of songs on Divorced Dad Rock, the soundtrack of emotional avoidance. I think that's my radio voice, but I haven't listened back to see if that's what it actually sounds like or not. So next week's video, we'll be back with terrible music from the late 90s and early 2000s that dads who are getting divorced still think is good music now. But that's fun. I'm having a lot of fun with that series, even though the songs are bad. So come back, check that out. Like, subscribe, do all those YouTube-y things. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Peace.